I set my coffee cup down on the kitchen counter and smiled. Not the polite, careful smile I had worn for 11 years every time Brooke walked into a room. A real one. The kind that starts somewhere deep in your chest and works its way up slowly, like the first warm day after a long Ohio winter. My phone was buzzing. I watched it skitter across the granite I had paid for, by the way, and I let it ring. It was my son. I poured myself a second cup and walked to the window. Let me back up. My name is Margaret. Most people who love me call me Maggie. I'm 63 years old. For 31 of those years, I was a school principal in Dayton, Ohio. First at Riverside Elementary and then at Jefferson Middle School. I was good at my job. I was the kind of principal who remembered every child's name, who stayed late to help a struggling teacher rewrite her lesson plan, who drove to the dollar store on Friday afternoons to buy snacks for the kids whose lunch accounts had run dry. I truly believed, that if you gave enough, consistently enough, people would eventually rise to meet you. I raised my son alone. His father left when Daniel was 4 years old, and I made a decision that night, standing in the kitchen of our small house on Covington Road, that I would never let my son feel that absence. I would be enough. I would be more than enough. I worked. I saved. I put Daniel through Ohio State, not with loans, with money I had set aside for 20 years in a savings account. I called his future. He graduated with a degree in business management and not a single dollar of debt. I cried at his graduation. I drove home alone that evening and sat in his empty bedroom and cried some more, but they were good tears. I had done what I set out to do. Then he met Brooke. Brooke was, and I want to be fair here, I want to be honest, she was beautiful, sharp, ambitious in the way that makes a room pay attention when she walks in. She had a small interior design business and a mother named Diane who wore linen blazers and spoke about square footage the way other people speak about feelings. The first time I met Diane at a dinner in Columbus, she looked at my JCPenney blouse and asked me where I had summered, and I said, "I work summers," and she smiled the smile of someone storing information. Daniel and Brooke got engaged 14 months after they met. I was happy. I told myself I was happy. I paid for most of the wedding, $42,000. When I say most, I mean Diane contributed a floral arrangement and her opinion on the centerpieces. Daniel never asked me to cover it. He just showed me the venue. They had chosen a restored barn in Granville that cost $8,000 for the space alone, and looked at me the way he had looked at me since he was 4 years old, waiting without saying anything, because he had learned a long time ago that I would fill the silence. I should have said no. That is the hardest sentence I have written in my life, and I have written many hard sentences. Report cards, letters home to parents, a resignation letter I drafted and then crumpled up 4 times. But that sentence I should have said no, that one required something I was not ready to give until very recently. It required me to admit that I had built a version of my son that was not actually a man. It was a boy in a man's body who had learned that if he waited long enough, his mother would carry it. After the wedding, they bought a house in Dublin, a suburb north of Columbus. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a 2-car garage, a yard Brooke described as having potential. The mortgage payment was $3,100 a month. Daniel's salary was good. He was a project manager at a logistics company, but Brooke's design business was inconsistent. Some months she brought in real income. Other months, she brought in mood boards and frustration. I co-signed the mortgage. I told myself it was temporary, just until they got established. Just until Brooke's business picked up or Daniel got his next raise. I sent them $1,100 a month, every month, like clockwork, direct deposit on the first. I told no one. It felt private, like a kindness that didn't need an audience. What I didn't realize, what I was too close to see, was that I had made myself structurally necessary to their life in a way that had nothing to do with love. Diane knew about the money. Of course she did. Brooke wasn't subtle. And Diane had a way of extracting information from her daughter, the way you extract a splinter carefully, with purpose. But Diane never said thank you. She never acknowledged it. She just continued to materialize at Daniel and Brooke's house on weekends with her linen blazers and her opinions, setting herself up at their kitchen island like a permanent fixture. And I drove the hour and 20 minutes from Dayton to see my son, and smiled and said things like, "The kitchen renovation looks beautiful. Brooke and Diane, what a lovely scarf." The kitchen renovation, $8,300. My retirement fund, shrinking. This went on for 3 years. Then came the 4th of July. Daniel and Brooke hosted a party at their house. Both families, a handful of neighbors, some friends from Daniel's office. It was a hot Saturday, the kind where the air sits on your chest and doesn't move. I drove up from Dayton with a pasta salad and a watermelon and a set of outdoor string lights Brooke had mentioned wanting the previous month. I bought them at Target and drove with them in my back seat, like I was bringing a gift to someone who would notice and appreciate it. She did notice. She did not appreciate it. The party was already full when I arrived. Brooke was on the back deck with Diane and 2 women I didn't recognize, all of them holding glasses of rosé, all of them laughing at something that stopped when I came through the sliding door. Daniel was at the grill. He hugged me quickly, the hug of a man distracted by something, and pointed me toward the drinks table. I found my sister Carol in the corner near the hydrangeas. She was the only person there who had always been exactly what she appeared to be, and I had never been more grateful for her than I was in that moment. "You okay?" she said immediately, the way sisters do. "I'm fine," I said. I was fine for the first 2 hours. I talked to Daniel's coworkers. I refilled the pasta salad. I sang happy birthday to absolutely no one because it was not anyone's birthday, and I was already operating on nervous energy. I watched Brooke hold court on the deck and watched Diane circle the party like she owned it. It was around 4 o'clock when it happened. I had come inside to get a trash bag from under the kitchen sink. No one else was moving to clean anything, and there were cups everywhere, and I heard Diane's voice through the screen door. She was on the deck just outside, speaking to Brooke in the low, clear voice of someone who doesn't care if they're overheard. "She just shows up and starts cleaning like she works here," Diane said. "I know," Brooke said. "She does this every time. She has to be involved in everything. She cannot let go. It's controlling behavior," Diane said. "That's what it is, and Danny lets her do it." I stood there with the trash bag in my hands. Then Brooke said, "Honestly, I'm tired of it. I've been tired of it for a long time. I want our life to be our life." I should have stayed inside. I should have taken a breath, walked back out with my trash bag, and saved the conversation for a private moment. That is what the old Maggie would have done. The Maggie who had been filling silences and carrying loads and ironing over wrinkles for 63 years. I pushed open the screen door. Brooke saw me first. For one honest second, her face did what faces do. It showed me exactly what she thought of me. Then it rearranged itself. "Maggie," she said, and her voice had that careful warmth she used sometimes, the kind that doesn't actually touch you. "I heard you," I said. I was surprised by how calm I sounded. Diane looked at her rosé. "Mom," Brooke started. "I'm not your mother," I said quietly. "And I think we both know this has been coming for a while. So let's just say it." What I didn't know was that we had an audience. The sliding door was open. Daniel's coworkers were right there at the drinks table. 2 of the neighbors had drifted close. Carol was watching from the yard with her hand over her mouth. Brooke's voice shifted. It hardened in the way that happens when someone decides an audience means they have something to win. "You want to say it? Fine," she said. "You treat this house like it's yours. You show up whenever you want. You insert yourself into every decision. You give Danny money like it's a leash, and then you wonder why we can't breathe." The deck had gone completely quiet. "A leash," I said. "You heard me." Daniel had appeared in the doorway. He was holding his grilling tongs and looking at me with an expression I recognized from when he was a teenager, and I had caught him in something he didn't want to explain. Not guilt. Something worse. He was calculating. "Mom," he said. "And then this is the part I keep returning to," he said. "She's not wrong. You do make it hard sometimes." I looked at my son. I looked at him for a long time. The thing about spending a career in education is that you learn to read a room. You learn the difference between a child who is lost and a child who has decided that someone else will pay for whatever they take. Daniel had not been raised to be the second kind. I had tried so hard to raise him to be the first kind, the kind who knew how to find his way. But standing there on that deck, with the 4th of July sun pressing down on all of us, I understood that somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I had trained him to let me carry everything until it was convenient for him to have opinions about how I carried it. "All right," I said. I put the trash bag on the patio table. I picked up my purse from the chair where I'd left it. I found Carol in the yard, and I touched her arm and I said, "I'm going to head home." And she said, "I'm coming with you." And I said, "No, stay. I'm fine." And I meant it. I said goodbye to no one else. I drove the hour and 20 minutes back to Dayton with the radio off and the windows down, and I did not cry until I got to Covington Road, where I sat in my car in front of my own house for a while and let 31 years of something move through me. Then I went inside and opened my laptop. The first thing I did was log into my bank account. I stopped the automated transfer. $1,100 a month, gone from my outgoing payments, just like that. My cursor hovered over the confirm button for about 4 seconds. I pressed it. Then I opened my email and wrote to the mortgage servicer. As a co-signer on the loan, I had certain rights, and I exercised them carefully. I documented everything. I contacted my own attorney, a woman named Patricia, who I had known since our daughters played soccer together in 1998, and I told her the situation and asked her to advise me on what I could do and what I couldn't. What I could do was significant. What I couldn't do was remove myself from the co-signature retroactively without their cooperation. But Patricia pointed out several other avenues, and we talked for an hour and a half. That night I slept better than I had slept in years. The next morning, Daniel called. Then he called again. Then he texted. 4 messages. The escalating rhythm of someone realizing for the first time that the floor they have been standing on might not be permanent. I let it go to voicemail. I made my coffee. I sat in my living room with the windows open and listened to the neighborhood wake up, and I thought about a thing I had not allowed myself to think about seriously in a very long time. Florida. I had a friend named Rosemary who had retired to Sarasota 3 years earlier and called me every other Sunday to describe the quality of the light in a way that made me feel I was missing something specific. I had always said maybe someday. I had always said once things stabilize. I had been waiting for things to stabilize for 11 years. I called a real estate agent that morning. My house in Dayton was paid off. In the current market, Patricia told me later, I was sitting on something considerable. Daniel came to my door on Tuesday. He looked tired in the way people look when they have spent 2 days calculating and the numbers are not working out in their favor. I let him in. I made him coffee. I sat across from him at the kitchen table where he had done his homework for 12 years, where I had signed his permission slips and his college applications and, once, a birthday card so large it barely fit through the front door. "Mom," he said. "I'm sorry. What happened at the party?" "I know you are," I said. "I know. Brooke shouldn't have said it like that. In front of everyone." "No," I agreed. "She shouldn't have." He wrapped both hands around his mug the way he always did, the way he had done since he was a little boy, and he said, Can we get back to how things were?" I looked at my son. I looked at him with all the love I had, which was enormous, which had not diminished by 1 degree, and I said something I had never said to him in 34 years. "No, baby. We can't. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you know that what we had wasn't actually working for either of us." He started to speak. "Let me finish," I said gently. "I made you this way. Not on purpose, not out of anything but love. But I did it. Every bill I paid without asking you to figure it out first. Every silence I filled. Every time I came with money when I should have come with my hands in my pockets and said, I believe in you. Figure it out. I took something from you, Daniel. I took your chance to become someone who could handle his own life. That's on me. I own that." He was very quiet. "But I am 63 years old," I continued. "And I have given every functional dollar and every available hour to other people's futures since I was 22 years old. I don't have much runway left, and I am not going to spend what I have left doing more of the same." Daniel's jaw was working. He was doing the math. "The payments stopped," he said finally. "Yes, the house. You and Brooke are adults with incomes," I said. "You have options. You can refinance. You can sell. Brooke mentioned wanting your life to be your life. Now it is." "Mom." His voice cracked in the middle of the word, and I felt it all the way down to my feet. "We can't. The mortgage without your payment. We can't cover." "I know," I said. "That's important information. Use it." He left an hour later. He hugged me in the doorway the way he had not hugged me in a long time. Not the distracted hug at the grill, but a real one. Confused and frightened and genuine, The hug of someone who is realizing they are standing on ground that has been maintained by someone else for their entire adult life and is now learning the weight of the shovel. I cried after he left. I want to be honest about that. I cried, the full ugly cry in my kitchen for a good 15 minutes, and then I splashed cold water on my face and called Rosemary in Sarasota. I'm coming, I said. Finally, she said. The house sold in 9 days. In this market, my agent told me, that was nothing. She said it like it was news. I had a cash offer and a close date 6 weeks out, and I spent those 6 weeks quietly and purposefully and with more inner peace than I had felt since Daniel was small and the world was uncomplicated and my responsibilities were clear. I did not disappear. I want to be precise about this because there are people who would call what I did cruel, and I have thought carefully about that. I did not change my phone number. I answered Daniel's calls, not everyone, but many. I did not tell him I loved him less. I did not participate in his crisis in the way he wanted me to, which was to reverse my decision. But I stayed present in the ways that mattered. When he called on a Saturday in September and told me, very quietly, that Brooke had moved in with her mother and he was looking at his options, I listened for an hour without once saying, I told you so. I did say, I'm proud of you for handling it yourself. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I never really had to before. No, I said. You didn't. I moved to Sarasota on the second Saturday of October. Rosemary helped me carry boxes. We ate grouper sandwiches on the water that night and watched the sun drop into the Gulf, and the light went orange, and then pink, and then a color I don't have a name for, and I thought about the first morning after Daniel's father left, standing in my kitchen on Covington Road with a sleeping 4-year-old upstairs and a life I had to rebuild from whatever I had in my pockets. I had done it then. I was doing it now. 3 months later, Daniel came to see me. He drove down with a humility that was new on him and sat across from me on my lanai with the sound of the water in the background and told me that he and Brooke were officially separated. He told me he had renegotiated his mortgage with the servicer directly, had taken on a second project at work, was managing. He said the word managing like it was a foreign language. He was still conjugating but was starting to understand. I've been thinking about what you said, he told me, about how you made me this way. I waited. I didn't want to hear it, he said. But I've been thinking about it. And I think you were right about the part that was your fault. He looked at me steadily. But I'm an adult. At some point it became my fault too, for letting it go on, for not asking myself why I needed it. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. He was 34 years old, and he was just beginning to understand something that some people never learn at all. And I thought about every teacher I had ever coached who'd told me that the best moment in this work is when you watch someone figure something out that you could not figure out for them. Yes, I said. That's right. He squeezed my hand. We sat there with the water sounds for a while. Rosemary says hello, I said eventually. I don't know, Rosemary. You will, I said. She's having a dinner next Friday. I already told her you're coming. He smiled. Not the careful, calculating smile of someone who has learned to wait out his mother. The unguarded smile of a boy who has been seen clearly and loved anyway, which is the only smile that has ever mattered to me. Okay, he said. I'll be there. I want to say one more thing, and then I will let you go. I did not do this to punish my son. I want to be very clear about that, because I know how these stories get read, and I know that people will form their opinions, and some of those opinions will be harsh, and some will be generous, and most will be somewhere complicated in between. I did not stop the money to hurt Daniel. I stopped it because continuing would have meant choosing his comfort over his life, and those are not the same thing, and I had confused them for too long. I did it because I finally understood what my 31 years in a school had been trying to teach me the whole time, that you cannot want a future for someone more than you help them want it for themselves. That the deepest love sometimes looks like stepping back and letting someone feel the weight of their own life until they find out they can carry it. And I did it because I am 63 years old, and I have a lanai in Sarasota, and a friend named Rosemary who describes the light like it's a love language, and a coffee cup that goes cold now because I sit outside too long, watching the Gulf, and I have never, not once, in these 3 months, looked at the water and thought I should have stayed. The water is extraordinary here. I think I'll stay for a while.